Welcome, Jordan. Thank you for being a part of the series and taking the time to do this.
I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, no problem. So Jordan Fowler owns UrbanMeasure, which is a local Calgary company. You want to tell us a little bit about what you guys do for services?
Yeah, for sure. So UrbanMeasure, I was 19 years old, started back in 2003. Basically, we provide a variety of measurement and media solutions designed to help sell, rent, and renovate real estate for residential and commercial properties.
Awesome. So you work quite a bit with realtors, developers,
Yep.
stuff like that?
Yeah, the whole works. We work with realtors, developers, commercial realtors, architects, interior designers, basically anything real estate related, home stagers even sometimes. Basically anybody that really needs our services in the end. Because on that spectrum, on a realtor standpoint, we have a variety of services that help them sell it, including RMS measurements and marketing floor plans and photography and videography. On an interior design standpoint for both residential and commercial, they need as-built floor plans and AutoCAD files in order to start their actual renovation process. So we go out and recreate that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you started in the industry when you were around 11, you said?
I sure did.
And then you started your own business at 15. So tell us about that. How'd you get into the industry? How'd you go to that to start your own business?
My dad actually was a realtor. So was my mom. So was my stepsister. So I come from a family of realtors. But when I was 11 years old, that's kind of when I really needed to be able to make an allowance. So that's how I ran with it. Made my allowance by measuring houses, cleaning houses, doing whatever I could around all my dad's listings coming up. And he taught me to do it.
And then at 15, how did you decide to start your own business?
Basically, I realized that there was a market through not only my dad and learning how to measure his places for an allowance, but his buddies started giving me a call, trying to get me to come and help them out because even they were a little bit unfamiliar, or even to the extent where they just needed someone to hold the other end of the tape for them. And then, I decided to start a sole proprietorship because I wasn't old enough to incorporate, obviously, even until I was 18, just so I had the ability to write an invoice. I wasn't allowed to charge GST, but I was able to write an invoice to cut me a check right there. The only difference was I wasn't able to drive because I was 15, so they had to pick me up and drop me off in order for me to come and help them out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you did that till 19?
Yeah, till I was about 19. Obviously,
other jobs in there?
Yeah, I just did it kind of on the side, and for being honest, I actually had about 42 jobs in between there, which doesn't really make sense. But I don't know what it was. When I started that pro measurement company, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I knew what my intentions were down the road, and I just really didn't have anything else to go for. I really liked that concept, and I knew that I was what I was going to run with.
So how did you end up doing the other 42 jobs then?
You know what? It was just, I'd try one thing. If I wasn't into it, I'd say see you later. Or if I would show up late to this job and whatever it was, and I wouldn't really argue about trying to stick around. It was just kind of just went, and I tried to just experience kind of everything from working at Canadian Tire doing oil changes to oil rigs. It was kind of just all over the place. It was just kind of doing whatever I could to make at least a little bit of cash here and there, knowing that I wanted to be an entrepreneur though. So basically every single thing that I did in between didn't really matter.
And then at 19, you started UrbanMeasure.
Yep, I sure did. Yeah, so UrbanMeasure started, I was 21 when I started that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was 2003.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got my ages mixed up there.
Yeah, no worries, yeah.
Okay.
So 21, they started UrbanMeasure, yeah.
Okay, and you incorporated at that time. And I remember when we had our conversation, you went pretty hard when you're like 20, 21 in the working. What did your days look like?
Oh, they're crazy. I remember, I don't even remember counting hours. It was down to 22 hours a day sometimes. I was working pretty much Monday to Sunday. I remember I actually had a friend, my friend Chris, and I used to just do my work for the day, coming over to his place, throw on the TV and just hang out with him all night. I was still dressed in my suit because that's how I measured houses when I was starting the business. I'd go up dressed in a full suit, and then I would basically just almost fall asleep with everything in my lap, or with like my laptop in my lap, and then regroup, jump out the door, be out for another day.
So you'd measure houses all day and then go home at night and do the reports.
Exactly. Yeah. I had to put everything together in the evening. It's like, as of right now, I have an admin assistant that I'm able to hand the majority of that stuff off now, so we have a sequence. But back then, it was all me.
And then how long did you keep up that insane work ethic for?
A long time. It was at least about 5 years.
Wow.
I'd say. Yeah.
So you said you went to post-secondary as well too while you were working, right?
I sure did. Yeah. So I went to SAIT and took my architectural technology. And the reason why I actually did that was I wanted to be able to elevate the service we had to offer and move from just measurements to being able to offer floor plans as well as the renovation floor plans.
So in that 5 years that you were working like crazy, going to school, what kind of things did you have to sacrifice for the business and for the school?
Everything. Seriously, everything. I had tons of my buddies were going to University of Lethbridge. Tons of them were going to University of Calgary. And a lot of times I just had to sacrifice the fact that I couldn't go and enjoy myself like everybody else. I had a lot of friends who were going on holidays all the time. A lot of people were traveling all the time. Obviously, at that age, when you're 20, 21, that's the time where you and all your friends go to Asia or go to Europe together. But I didn't get to. I think the first trip that I took, I actually remember it, was with my girlfriend at the time and her family, and we went to Phoenix for I think about a week. But even then, I had my laptop on me the whole time. So that was the first time I really left the country, though.
Do you have any regrets around that?
No, actually, I don't at all. I think it's almost opposite regret now, because I'm glad that I took the time when I was that age to just get it out of the way, opposed to struggling, I guess, to find my way as I got a little older.
So what?
Which I've seen a lot of friends now. So
yeah, what motivated you to put in that time to work that hard?
Freedom, pretty much freedom. Like I just, one thing I learned in those 42 jobs is I didn't really want to work for my entire life. No, and it's not that I don't want to work, but I didn't want to ever have to rely on my job in order to be happy or make an income. Like I just wanted to kind of do what I wanted to do, but have the freedom to also do what I want. I just figured it's just like as far as me sacrificing those vacations for the 5-6 year period. Mm-hmm. I've since pretty much got to travel the majority of the world. Like I've gone on lots. As soon as I hired that one last person where I was able to go, I went for 4 months. So, and I went and traveled to Europe, but I went not necessarily as some broke backpacker. I had the ability to go and spend some cash and have some fun and experience things that others might not have experienced.
Yeah, it's a lot of entrepreneurs would rather work 80 hours for themselves than 40 for someone else, right? Mm-hmm. So
yep.
You've had a few bumps on the road along the way. So how long has UrbanMeasure been running now then?
It's been running since 2003.
2003.
Yeah,
okay.
We've been going, so over 15 years now.
That's great.
Yeah, so we've definitely had a few bumps on the road.
So one of your first office spaces you were telling me about was a co-working space.
It was a co-working space.
Tell me that story.
So actually, it was a really great co-working space. Actually, even my media boys, that's where I ended up meeting them. So all the boys that do my media, my photography, that's where I met them. And it was like a really good group of people down there. It was just a space off of 17th Avenue that we all rented. And overall, we actually had a lot of good connections, and there were some pretty good friends at the time. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, it didn't result in the best ending, because it kind of turned into we were funding the entire rent for that space without knowing it, when it was supposed to be kind of a shared impact. So. Mm-hmm.
And what did you do once you realized that?
Well, I just said, you have to give me 4 months free rent, and then we're gone. So I stuck around and did my thing.
Early on, you hired a couple people. One of them ended up leaving you after you trained them and stuff like that. How did that happen, and what did you learn from that experience?
Fortunately, it's actually 2 employees that I'm doing it. So I had one guy. He didn't really mean as much to the company, so it wasn't that big of a deal. He wasn't quite as trained, as the other. But you know what, he was kind of dispensable anyways, but it definitely made me realize that you can't just put your trust on everybody.
And what about the other one?
The other one, yeah, she was a big hit because, you know, she wasn't, more so than the other guy, she was like family to us. Like, she'd been with me for well over 4 years. We had a lot of like just business development in general together where, yeah, I don't know. I don't really know exactly what happened, but then one of our competitors obviously offered a better deal because now she's actually like their lead drafting role to their company. So, but the downside is she basically took everything that I had taught her, as well as her client list, as far as I'm aware, and brought it to him.
So how big of a hit did your business take at that point?
Pretty big hit. So, because the competitor that she actually is now working for was also my photographer for about the same duration that she was with us. And then kind of let her know where he also decided to part ways, do his own thing. And that's kind of when she started going a little sideways in the company, started no-showing her shifts. And then, yeah, and then out of nowhere, they were working together.
Was there like a point, like a solid point in time when you realized that that's what happened?
Oh yeah, actually it was at the Calgary Real Estate Board trade show. And so I hadn't seen either of them for like a few months, and it only happened, she had left in December, and then we bumped into that company in January, at the end of January.
So
and he was offering our services with the exact same look, the exact same everything. I was like, okay, that doesn't really make sense. And then, yeah, we found out a little ways later.
So what went through your head when you found that out?
Yeah, I was definitely a little devastated. Not only because of who it was she went to, because of that guy stole everything from us to an extent. You know, like in that 4.5 year duration that he was my photographer, he worked with all of our top clients, every single one of our top clients. So, and then basically what ended up happening is I couldn't act fast enough with the notice I was given to replace him in order to get a photographer that could shoot equal quality. So I got to the point where even my photographer, I had to almost surrender my clients to him because it was that, or I just lost them altogether, which turns out I ended up did anyways, but I was kind of under the impression they would come back to us eventually, but a good majority of them haven't.
What percentage of revenue do you think you lost in that time?
I would say at that point I had 4 photographers going just through his company at that point, pretty much full time. So I'd say the revenue has to be anywhere between $250 to $500 a year.
Wow.
Right.
So how did you deal with that? Like personally, what did you do to work through that? Because that would have been incredibly stressful.
Well, it was stressful for sure, but you know what? We just found another solution. We took photography off the menu for a little while until we could find a proper solution to be able to kind of attack the same target market. Fortunately, when you're dealing with these higher end clients, though, they only want the best of the best. And I understand that. So starting point is never the best of the best until you can actually work with them. It's even with that competitor. When he started with us, he could barely, his photography was very subpar until we kind of worked with him and trained with him, and he got better, and he just he actually ended up just mastering the service. So it kind of was like a fresh start, but one thing that we did end up doing was taking our legalities very seriously. So, and that's one thing I'd never even consider questioning again moving forward. So every single one of our employees, subcontractors, doesn't matter, they sign a non-compete confidentiality agreement. So just have to do it. Because that was one thing I made a big error on by basically putting my faith and my trust in these guys more, because I've always treated everybody with my company more like family, I guess you could say. So
would that be your advice for entrepreneurs who have similar liabilities to ensure that all the legal steps are in place to avoid having people stealing their clients?
Oh yeah, Yeah, you definitely want to. Even though, one thing I've learned though, it doesn't really help that much. And so we spent a lot of lawyer fees trying to figure out how we could take them down here, what we could do about this, what we could do on there for all three of them. And in the end, basically the court rules that they have to work regardless of how they get their business. So to an extent, there's not, but then again, now with the legal documentation I have in place, I at least have a timeline. Now I know the rules, because the biggest issue before was I kind of cheaped out. I used a program or a website called lawdepot.ca on my initial documentation. But who would have known? It seemed like it was a legit document. Lots of people print their bills of sale off of there. Lots of people print their lease agreements off of there. So it's actually like a pretty reputable company to be going with. But obviously, as someone that's not a lawyer, I wasn't aware that you couldn't just say an indefinite time period.
Yeah. I mentioned Ben probably shook his head. Hey.
Oh yeah, big time Ben shook his head. But you know what, since working with Ben now, I've learned a lot, like a ton about this legal side of things. So at least we have it broken down where employees, they're not allowed to act on it for a minimum 6 months, which, it gives us at least a little bit of leeway for us to be able to regroup, maybe block them out a little bit, like delete a lot of the stuff that they might have received or learned while they were with us, maybe make some changes and progress to our current business model so they couldn't just copy exactly what we have at the time. So, and then on a subcontractor standpoint, it actually is 2 years that you get, as long as you have the proper documentation in place. So from the second that agreement is terminated, it's 2 years that they can't compete with you or go after your clients.
So in your years in business, what have you learned in terms of who you should hire and who you work best with?
You know what?
And how to go about that, kind of just so like other entrepreneurs can learn from your experience.
You know what? I guess most important when it comes down to it, it just depends if you vibe with each other just in that initial interview process. Because we've had a lot of people come in, they're so qualified, their schooling's on check, their resume was one of the nicest things you've ever seen. But then they sit down and you can't really connect with them that well. Which right there, I'm like, I don't know. The way I look at it is like, would I welcome this person to my family almost? Because that's what it becomes. You work with them all day, every day. So, and then, I just feel like obviously, I don't know, there's a lot about what we've done our hiring where we've actually tried to hire green. So they have their schooling. We don't really want them to have a ton of experience. And that's because we like to mold them to exactly what we want. And I find a lot of the times they come, if you hire with too much experience, then they actually come with too many, I don't want to call it issues, but habits, where it's just tough for them to break it. So, yeah.
Interesting. So you've scaled to a quite sizable business at this point.
Yeah, we sure have.
Revenue-wise. What would you attribute your ability to grow your revenue to?
What do you think we'll be able to?
What do you attribute your growth to? Like, how did you get to where you are?
So basically, what attributed to that, in my opinion, first off, would be my staff, actually, because you know what? I've got the best staff in the world. Like I've had a few hiccups here and there, but I've got the best team ever. Like when it comes down to my regional manager, my sister who works for me as well, she's our admin manager, Ken who's our field manager, Danny, Tyler, Mike, Brandon, Ryan, they are all some of the best people I've ever worked with in my life. And every single one of them I feel cares about the company just as much as I do. Right? Dave as well. Dave will step in and Dave has only been with us about a year now, but I just really feel like it makes a big impact when you've got the customer service level we do from every single employee involved, including my entire media team.
How would you advise or suggest that entrepreneurs deal with that roller coaster in business? Because I think it's pretty rare that doesn't happen
No,
to
it doesn't.
entrepreneurs.
And, I remember being told the same thing over and over. Like my dad's always giving me really good advice about this stuff, but when people say that it's up and down with business, they're not lying at all, because it is up and down. Like you go through these peak periods where you're on top of the world and you can spend like crazy and you don't even really think about it. And then suddenly you'll have even a bad month could just slow you right down. And suddenly you're gonna look at all your expenses and you're like, holy crap, like what was I thinking? Like even with me, when we were doing really well, I don't even know how I did it, but some of my Google AdWord bills were $5,000 to $10,000 in a month, just because I just wasn't even paying attention. But I think most importantly, it's important to realize that it's going to happen. Always prepare for it. Always save for those rainy days. Like just make sure you save for those rainy days, because they're coming, whether you ever feel like they are or not. Be patient and just be positive and stay positive that those days will get better when they're down.
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
And what advice do you have for new entrepreneurs just starting out?
For new entrepreneurs, don't pay a lawyer $1,500 to incorporate your business. Sorry, Ben.
I don't think that's his bread and butter
anyways.
anyways.
So many of these businesses I find that go to legal firms and they're like, oh yeah, I need to incorporate a business, and they'll spend thousands of dollars getting everything set up through these legal firms. And you just go to the registry, incorporate the business, $300. Maybe it's $400 now, but back then I think it was about $300.
Yeah, it's not
Do a
lot.
nuance search, run the name, done. Well,
That's good advice.
yeah.
And then what advice do you have for surviving the first 5 years in business? Because that's where they lose most.
For
right?
sure, yeah. Like I said, just keep your expenses down and keep your head high, because you got to keep going. Like if you even give it a little bit, you're pretty screwed. But even now I see a lot of people and a lot of friends, they try to start a business and they think that it's just going to take off overnight. In my opinion, that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Doesn't matter how much money you save or have in the bank or how great your idea is. It's not, like 99% of businesses don't take off overnight.
Yeah.
So work, get another job, have that other job readily available, have another skill set. So for example, even when I first started UrbanMeasure, one of my main jobs that I worked was taping drywall. So I went and worked the rigs for quite a while. I think I was 18, 19, but that was more to save for my schooling and save for everything else while I was still doing pro measurement. And then, but outside of that, I also taped drywall for a long time. And the only reason I taped drywall, it's not because I enjoyed it. It's because a friend of mine, we both kind of he was really good at it and I was subpar at it, but it was just enough to make the process go smoothly. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you could charge, say, $1,200 for a house, and him and I would just do it together. We didn't work for another company. Again, we just started a sole proprietorship doing that, where we just kind of split it down the middle, and then we'd be able to do 2 houses side by side. But it was just, it was just the best way for me to make money at the time. Mm-hmm. That was in my business.
We have a lot of these people that are looking to start businesses, and they look at how big their market is and then assume that they can get a percentage of that. And it often doesn't happen. Just because you start a business doesn't mean you're going to have customers or how many people will adopt a service, right? And it just doesn't necessarily happen. And a lot of people fail to plan for the what if that it doesn't go that way, right?
It's true.
So that's really tough.
Which is why I say just have a job for the first bit.
Yeah.
Obviously you're going to have to commit yourself to going full time, but it's basically even when I first started UrbanMeasure, I remember just I had to make rent. Mm-hmm. That was all I really had going at the time. And I just buckled down and I made rent that month, and then I went and made rent the next month, and then things got a little slower because in real estate things go down a little bit. So I'd go back to tape and drywall a little bit, and then I'd go back to UrbanMeasure. It was kind of back and forth the whole time. So
yeah, that's always a mixed view on that point, whether people should just drop it and go all in and start their business. Like when I interviewed Graham Sherman, he said you just got to go all in and everything's riding on you, so that you're forced to succeed. But at the same time, other people even Gary Vaynerchuk's work another job and then at night and on weekends work on your business
Exactly.
until it's sustainable.
Yeah.
So
Then flip it, flop it, or flip it around.
Yeah, exactly. I don't
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I haven't fully formulated an opinion. I think to a degree it depends on what your overhead is. If you have a family, you don't want to risk everything.
No,
right?
of course. Yeah.
But if you don't have a lot of living expenses, you don't have a family, then I think it's more realistic to try and go all in.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a proven model, at least to some
For
degree.
sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely think that those people with balls, the ones that just go for it, because
Yeah.
that's pretty tough to do.
Yeah.
But
scary.
it's scary. Yeah. I definitely tried it a few times, but I just had to get back and then I go back. But he's right. As far as doing it in the evenings and weekends, I think the goal is to swap that so that you can do something else in the evenings and weekend and move that to daytime.
Yeah.
Right? So at least put the majority of your focus on it. But if you still need that job, then you can swap whatever else you're doing to the evenings and weekends.
That makes sense. And that's kind of like when I started my business, I was doing a little bit of work for my parents and coaching some gymnastics and stuff like that on the side.
Yeah.
And like the combination of jobs was able to make the business work at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So what are your goals both personally and for the business in the next like 5 to 10 years?
So both personally and I guess with personal, I don't know, I feel like every single book that I read, it's always telling me you need 6 points of income to kind of become the millionaire, I guess you could say, that you want to be one day. So I've kind of put a little bit of a focus on that where I'm placing I'm just kind of planting the seeds all over the place and seeing what comes of it. So we've got a couple other little businesses on the go. Obviously in the next while, I'd like to start a family, a great girlfriend. So I would look to go that route as well. And then on a business standpoint, definitely been kind of revamping this business a lot to become a franchisable business. So that would be the goal, whether it would be North American wide or just nationally. But I would like to get the ball rolling on it.
Do you want to talk about those other businesses at all?
Sure, I can talk about them. So basically, I Do Sweet Shit is basically just a social media platform that basically I just repost on our social medias of people doing, like everyday people doing sweet shit that they'd feel accomplished for. So and actually I started I was actually at a rope swing, like a cliff jumping area in Invermere, BC with a friend of mine. And I was being a huge wuss and I wouldn't do the rope swing. And so I remember he looked at me, he was like, do sweet shit, Jordan, do sweet shit. You never do sweet shit. I'm like, oh, you're right, I never do sweet shit. So I got up there and I ended up doing it. And I remember the feeling that it gave me to be like, holy crap, I actually did it. Like that was wild because it wasn't just a little rope swing. Like this thing was, you had to climb 15 steps, hug down underneath a little tree, and then it would fly you for probably 150 feet. And then you'd finally hit water by the time you're about 30 feet in the air.
Man, I've seen so many rope swing fail videos.
Oh, yeah. And this one was like, this was the definition of rope swing fail. Like if you failed, you were hurt.
Oh, man.
So,
and you're organizing trips now with that too, right?
Yeah, we are. So now we've kind of transitioned it. We're struggling to learn good methods to monetize it. We'll figure it out. I don't really know quite yet because it's kind of transitioned to the point where it almost could become like a Red Bull concept where we just organize all these sweet events and like sponsor athletes, but there's also the ability to throw adventure, like kind of host adventure tours. So we've thrown a few of those last while. So there's one we actually have coming up in March called Rally the Valley. So it's a second annual where we partner up with a bunch of companies, including Big Rock, including Red Bull, including Team Voodoo. It's like they're like a professional snowmobiling group based out of the Invermere and Radium area.
Sick.
So last year, though, we ended up having like an audience of probably 300 people ended up showing up for this thing.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a nice big party in the parking lot, and then everybody just went sledding for the day. They had a big air competition. So now this year it's gonna happen again. So we're taking part in that again.
Very cool. We'll have to get Greg involved. He does a bunch of stuff like snowboarding and paragliding and downhill biking and stuff.
So you do sweet shit. Yeah. Nice. Find us. Tag us. So, yeah, that's the concept of I Do Sweet Shit, though. It's just
very cool.
It's kind of giving the everyday person a place to shine.
Yeah.
And like a little bit of a humble brag. Because online, lots of people, like you see all these different platforms out there where people, yeah, like they're just, I don't know, like there's so many companies out there now where you submit yourself doing random funny things or whatever it is, and they'll repost your video. So,
Are you guys on TikTok?
not on TikTok, no.
Apparently it's getting crazy views on anything like that.
Is
so
it
you
really?
should definitely get on TikTok.
TikTok, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah.
I guess, like Instagram engagement was back in the day.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, yeah.
So, and then
cool.
I guess the next business, it's been a weird concept I've been working on for a couple of years now, where actually it's a buddy of mine. We've kind of just joked around it back and forth the past bit, just because in the summertime I like to wear like strap Velcro sandals, where everybody calls them dad sandals. So the dad sandal concept hasn't really ever been coined, and so we're now in the process of developing a product called Dad Sandal Club, where everybody can join the Dad Sandal Club. And I guess the idea would be to have this dad box where we have the dad strap sandals, then you've got maybe some lawn fertilizer, you got a sleeve of golf balls, kind of just getting like a whole dad box together. Something that's just kind of easy, one click, ship off, done.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds
So,
like fun.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you telling us
Thank
your
you for having
stories
me.
and the
I
insight.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Alrighty.
Our first sponsor is Syndication, which is a video production company that I started. We do video production and online marketing for businesses of all sizes, ranging from solopreneurs to Fortune 500 companies. Our second sponsor is Gravity Cafe. They've been gracious enough to give us their space. The coffee's awesome. They have live music 3 nights a week. The beer's great. It's an awesome place to come hang out. Our next sponsor is Flagship Business Brokers. Flagship Business Brokers provides entrepreneurs with support through the purchase, sale, or financing of a business. They have a proven track record of delivering fast, cost-efficient, and client-focused transactions. Another sponsor of the Ambition Project is BusinessLink. BusinessLink is Alberta's entrepreneurial hub. They are a nonprofit organization that helps people navigate the steps towards starting their own businesses. Just because you're in business for yourself doesn't mean you're in business by yourself. BusinessLink's team of in-house startup experts are there to support you all along the way.